Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this review, we are looking at the ThreeZero Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie Leonardo. So this is a 1/6 scale collectible figure, which means it's basically the ThreeZero version of a Hot Toys. Anything along those lines. You guys are familiar with this scale, even though I don't review it too much. I'm pretty sure you guys all understand what these are. They're high-end action figures with sometimes limited articulation, sometimes really good articulation, sometimes it's kind of in the middle. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about here, because some of this articulation on this guy is really nice, and some of it not so much. But as you can see, he's covered with soft goods and various different bits and pieces, and it looks really nice, and that's what it's supposed to do. So let's get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just over 12 inches. It goes just to the top of his head, so he's maybe like 12 1/4. I didn't think I was going to need it, but I do need the larger ruler for this figure. So it is pretty well in scale, because if a standard 6-foot tall man is at 12 inches, this guy's a little over 12 inches, so it's pretty well in scale. So that's all right. Maybe a little bit tiny, but not too much to worry about. So that's pretty good. And he does have some accessories, as you can see, and as you saw on the turnaround. Let's grab him from here. He does have his katanas. So that's pretty nice. I'll show you those in a little bit closer detail in the overlay photo. They look pretty nice. They're nice and unique, and they have a lot of detail on them, so that's pretty good. Then we also have some interchangeable hands. You can see the hands on the figure are the gripping hands for the katana. We have two kind of wider gripping hands, which are probably just like a relaxed pose hand. And then we have two fist hands. And all of the hands have that cloth wrap on there, which is really good. It's kind of like, it's got probably like a polyurethane or something on there to make it kind of rigid. It's not like a loose cloth, but it is cloth, so that's good. And that's what most of the figure has on it. Some of the cloth is actually kind of soft, like the stuff around his hips, that will provide for the articulation you need. We have various types of material in here also to give it kind of a more realistic look. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty good. The straps are all this kind of pleather material, so they look like leather, but they're nice and thin and lightweight, so that's good. The part that's supposed to look like duct tape is actually some kind of small tape simulator type material, so that's pretty good. It's actually laid on there, so that's really cool. So all of those kind of details are there. They're really nice. The bandana is sculpted around the head, but for the part that dangles, the dangly bits are actually cloth. Unfortunately, they're not wired or anything, so you can't pose them in like an action pose and have it look particularly good. Even though in the photos, the official photos of this guy, they showed the bandana like off in the wind, kind of like, you know, up there. And in reality, you can't do that. So that's a bit of a bummer, but still really nice. And we can see more of that, excuse me, pleathery material back here. That looks pretty good. And just all around, it's a really, really solid looking figure. I mean, the shell looks like it might have come off of a baby turtle in real life. It's got tons of great shading and sculpt work, so that's awesome. You can see the scabbards or the sheaths for the katanas. They have loads of detail on them, so that's pretty good. The skin is all textured. You can see he's got all of the little, not scales, but like the reptile skin that you would expect. So that's on there, and that's nice. And it is well enough painted. I mean, it's not like every individual little lump has shading on it, but he does have shading throughout in varying paint colors and finishes. So it looks really good. And then the paintwork for the face bandana, even though it's technically a different material, not technically, it's very practically a different material than the dangly bits. It's pretty well done. I mean, it's sculpted well enough, and it's a close enough color that it doesn't really stand out as being a separate material. So I like that a whole bunch. The face probably could use a little bit better shading, but it's not a big deal. And the eyes, while they don't look bad at all from any distance, if you get too close, they do look a little bit cartoonish, a little bit fake, but still, they look really good. This is all a separate thing here. So basically everything that's on there, it's real. I mean, obviously it's tiny and not actually a real thing, but it is a tangible physical thing that they added to the figure to make it realistic. So that's pretty cool. Even the little New York button up here is made to look like a real little button. So that's cool. So now let's get we'll leave the swords in there. That's fine. Let's talk about the articulation, because that's probably what most of you are going to be concerned with for this type of figure. You need to be able to pose it, otherwise you should buy a statue. And that's the reason I don't normally collect Hot Toys. It's just they're very hard to pose in any sort of dynamic pose. It's just they can't do it most of the time. Some can, of course. So the question is, can this guy be posed effectively? The answer is Mostly, kind of. The swords do fit in back here, so if you want to do that, you can, but I don't know why you would. The shoulder pads are on a little piece of cloth that's connected underneath the bodysuit, so they are kind of floaty. They're connected, but they're floaty, so they won't really get in the way too much. This one has a lot more play than this one, but they're still fine. The head is on what I think is a really long double ball peg, but it might be just a really long single. It's kind of hard to say, and I don't want to pop it off to potentially break it. But you can move the head all the way around, up and down. You can bring it side to side, and then you can rotate it. And the neck is the soft oversuit, that rubber material that most of the body is made out of. So when you move the head, the neck tends to move with it a little bit. It's not as good as I would like, because as you can see, if you move it too much, you end up with a big gap in the neck. So you have to be a little bit careful, but it's still pretty good. I like it a lot. I'm a little bit worried about Raphael because in the photos I've seen of him, his head looks like it's sitting up really high. But on Leo and Mikey, they look pretty good. And you don't get too much, I don't know how well you can see it, but back here the neck is kind of really thick in the back. It's all right on Leo. It's not so great on Mikey, but we'll get to that in Mikey's review. But you do get really good range. You can look really far down and fairly far up, and of course all the way around side to side, so that's fine. The shoulders are connected kind of like an SH Figure Arts shoulder. There's a large ball peg that goes into the torso that lets the entire arm move around. So it doesn't give you the biggest range, but it does allow you to bring the arm forward and back some, up and down a little bit. But then we have a standard ratchet hinge, which brings the arm all the way up to the side, which is fine. And you can see inside that you have that hard plastic in there, which the bodysuit just kind of sits over. So that's okay. I mean, you can see it a little bit, but you know, it is articulation. You're going to have to see it if you want it to function, which is something we're going to come back to in just a second. You can actually use the bicep swivel, and the entire arm will rotate because it's got the rubber bodysuit type thing going on. So that's fine. And now we have the bicep, which is a problem because there's no seam at all in the elbow. So if the arms are straight down, they look good. But if the arms get bent, or even if you look at this one, the rubber's already kind of messed up and it won't go back. So it really hurts the sculpt. So when you bend the arm, it is a ratcheted single jointed elbow. Well, at least I think it's a single, it feels like it. You get this total collapse of the anatomy. It's just totally squishy and soft and looks like a folded piece of rubber, which is really not good. And I know for the 1/6 scale collectors, there's kind of this big debate about should we hide it with a bodysuit like this, or should we make the articulation like they did for the knee, where you actually have a piece of a point of articulation. And for some people, you know, they don't want to see it. But here's the thing. If it looks like this, you're better off seeing the articulation than a folded piece of rubber instead of a bicep and forearm group of muscles. It looks really bad, really bad, and it doesn't give him the best range, and you can kind of force it, but it's not great. I don't like that at all. And here's the thing, they could have done it a lot better if they had just done, and maybe Hot Toys does this, I don't know. If you had like a lot thicker piece for the bicep and the individual muscle groups, and then soft bits, like thinner pieces, around there, that way when you fold it, it collapses in the proper way. But as it is, it's just not very good. The elbows are pretty ugly, and only moderately useful, so that's kind of a bummer. The wrists, on the other hand, are pretty nice. Oh, by the way, you can bring the arm all the way around. No problem at all, even with the shoulder pad, so that's pretty good. As far as the wrists go, it's a single ball peg, but they have pretty good range. You can move the hands around, you know, pretty far, pretty well. This part right here I can pop it off to show you. The forearm is just a soft sleeve, and it does overlap on the hand, so it keeps the sculpt looking pretty good. It's not ideal since the cloth doesn't go all the way out, but still, it looks pretty good. Like I said, you get really good range, so I'm pretty happy about that. He has, for his torso articulation, it's kind of hard to use and to see on Leo, but they have a ball peg, kind of like a diaphragm joint going on. You can see the seam right here in the shell. That's where it is. So the shell itself does not connect down here. It only connects to the upper body. So you can lean him forward. He doesn't go that far, but you can. Obviously, you can't lean him back very far, but you can lean him side to side. It has a pretty decent range. It's not a ton, but you can rotate him around. So, like I said, Leo's isn't the best because he's got a whole lot going on in the waist, but it's not bad. It is all right, and I'm okay with the front shell, and the sides are all soft, so they flex. These are connected down here and then in the back up here, but as you can see, as he rotates, they just kind of go with him. So as long as you're mindful of all that when you're posing him, you really shouldn't have too much trouble. Now for the hips, we already talked about this stuff being all soft, so no big deal there. There is a seam in the bodysuit, which is a good thing because it allows the legs to come forward and it allows them to go out to the side. So it's basically your standard ball hinge for the hips. And then you do get your thigh swivel. Be careful because we do have some straps and things that will get possibly torn or disconnected, but you still have pretty good range. I mean, you can bring the legs pretty far out, pretty far forward. They do kind of go out at an angle when you're going forward, but it's not terrible. It's all right. And then for the knees, we have that single ratcheted hinge, which gives you almost, well, it's probably about 90 degrees. And see, I would much rather have a joint that looks like that than that big piece of folded rubber that we had up top. So I prefer that by far. And then lastly, we have our double ball peg for our ankles, which doesn't provide the best range of motion, but you can move the feet around. You get your kind of an ankle rocker. You can bring them forward and back a little bit. It's just not the greatest range. So there's a reason all of the production photos of this guy kind of hid the elbows and didn't really have the feet flat on the surface. It's because you can't really do it. Now, if you're going to pose him dynamically and prop him up or something, it's going to be fine. If you put him on a display stand of some sort, you'll be all right with it. And I don't think the elbows are enough of a problem to discourage the purchase entirely. If you like the figure from what you've seen and it's only the elbows holding you back, I'd say go ahead and get it. They're pretty cool looking figures. I like the fact that it's loaded with soft goods and realistic material, so I think it's a lot of fun, and I think most of you guys will like it, so there you go. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have a new video every single day. We talk about all kinds of action figures, video games, TV, movies, all kinds of fun stuff, so make sure you subscribe, come back, see what there is to watch, and in the meantime, keep collecting.